My name is Glenn Gallatin. I'm with Oral History Videos, and today I'm meeting with Larry Burk, and today is March 31st, 2020, and we're doing a little oral history video. So thank you, Larry. I want to know if you can just tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what childhood was like.
Well, my mother gave me the name Lawrence. She liked that name. She knew somebody named Lawrence and she liked that. But I've always gone by Larry. All my life I've been Larry. But my real name is Lawrence Paul Burk. I was born in Mesa, Arizona at the Mesa Southside Hospital and was raised in Tempe. My father was a professor at Arizona State University. And so we lived not very far from the university. And my childhood home was on Spence Avenue. My mom was always embarrassed that it was not the nicest place in town, and she had lots of friends that lived in the more ritzy parts of town. But it wasn't too long until she started working. When I was probably about 9 years old, she started. They did real well financially. My dad always had steady work at the university, and my mom, her work was not as steady. It was up and down, but she made a lot of money at times with real estate sales.
And so tell me about growing up and being a kid and where you went to school and who your friends were.
Well, I had a friend that lived next door. His name was Larry also, and so we were best friends, and we're still friends to this day. I don't keep in touch with him as much as I should, but I had two brothers and a sister, and they were all the oldest. I was the baby. They'd sit around and talk about old times, and I was younger, and I wasn't there on those old times, and I always felt left out as they would talk about their experiences growing up. But I really enjoy my brothers. My sister passed away a few years ago, but I really have a great relationship with my brothers. We try to get together at least once a year and see each other probably more often than that, but at least we get together once a year.
What were your
went to school there in Tempe, Broadmoor School and Ritter School, and I went to the middle school at McCamey and then went to Tempe High School. In high school, I excelled quite a bit in sports. I was in the wrestling team and I was on the football team my senior year. A great experience. I had a girlfriend, and life was really sweet in high school, and it was wonderful memories going back into high school. I was also involved with music. I was in a couple of plays my freshman and sophomore year, and was in the top choir, and so we went on excursions. We traveled to San Francisco and other places, and that was a lot of fun being with the people in the choir. So I kind of associated with the sports and athletic guys, and I also spent a lot of time with some of the kids in the music area. After that, I graduated from high school. I went on a mission to Bolivia for my church, and it was back when Bolivia was a very new country to the church, and so it was really introducing the church in that country. It was a great experience. Bolivia was a wonderful place to be able to serve a mission for my church, and I served there for 2 years. I really struggled with the language. It was not coming to me very easily. I was called as quite an important position to be a branch president. For the branch, it was having a lot of struggles, and I didn't have the language skills to be able to do that. I had a wonderful experience as I very fervently prayed to the Lord that He would bless me to be able to communicate and be able to fulfill that calling. and I was blessed with gift of tongues, and within days I was able to have interviews and communicate with people and be able to fulfill my calling as the branch president. And it was a great experience. wonderful people that I worked with. I really learned to love the Bolivian people, and I, to this day, feel a very close affection to them.
Wow.
After serving there, I served in a city called Potosi, which was the highest in altitude of any branch of the church. I served in the capital city. I served in down in the jungle cities, in a place called Santa Cruz, and another one called Camiri. And then I returned home and went to Brigham Young University and studied and got a degree in psychology. While I was on my mission, I had a companion who was introduced me to the ideas of how to communicate with people and be able to work through conflict and resolve problems. And in my family, growing up, a wonderful family, but the way we resolved conflict is whoever was the angriest and the loudest, and whoever got the last word was the winner. And that just was very stressful. And this man introduced me to ideas about how to work through problems and resolve conflict. And it was like just a whole new world that opened up to me that was just fascinating and beautiful to me. And I loved it so much that I wanted to pursue a career in that type of work. And so I wanted to become a counselor. So I went to school and studied psychology. Graduated from Brigham Young University with a bachelor's degree. Came home and was just kind of floundering, didn't know what I was going to do, and I thought I needed a graduate degree. So I went back and got a degree in communications. And while I was there that year, I met this beautiful woman. Her name was Marion Lambert, and fell in love with her, and graduated and moved to Arkansas. And we were married in the Oakland Temple, which was near her home. And so we moved to Arkansas, and took my first job there after graduating. I had completed my coursework, but I had not completed my thesis, so I didn't graduate with my master's degree yet. And so we lived in Arkansas for about 3 years, and we had 2 children born there, Rachel, my oldest, and Paul, my second. And they were born in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I worked for a company named Don Ray Media, and they had radio stations and television stations and newspapers. And so I traveled around all over the country visiting these newspapers and doing training with their management and recruiting, and it was a great experience. I really enjoyed that kind of work. I created training programs for them to improve their management skills and things of that sort. And for a kid just out of college, I thought that was a great experience. From there, we both wanted to move back west. We missed our family, and it was kind of a long ways. And so we had an opportunity to work for another company that they were building a cement manufacturing facility in Utah. And so I interviewed with them, and they gave me the job, and so we moved to Elk Ridge, Utah, which is in the south part of Utah Valley, right. South of Provo. And we had a beautiful home there and a beautiful place, and a great job, and things looked really well. We had 2 more children born there in Utah. Theron and Charisse were born there. It's kind of an interesting thing. Charisse grew up and married a man from that area, and her children were born in that same hospital where she was born. So that was kind of a coincidence. But we lived there for a few years and worked at the cement manufacturing plant. I was eventually laid off when they had some problems with kind of a corporate buyout thing that happened, and so a lot of people got laid off, and I was laid off, and I went to work selling LDS books and tapes and,
Huh.
media. And that was kind of an interesting job, but there wasn't very much money in it. So eventually we left that and came here to Arizona. And I started working for Baptist hospitals in one of their facilities as a human resources director. That's the work that I had been doing in human resources. So here I was in Arizona now, finally, and working in human resources. We had more children born. One was born in a hospital in Phoenix because we worked for Baptist hospitals. And then the next two were born at the Desert Samaritan Hospital, which was later changed their name to Banner Samaritan Hospital, and Desert Banner Hospital. That's where they were born. And so we had Mark was born in the Phoenix Baptist Hospital, and then Jenny and Dallin and eventually Jacob came along, and they were all born at the Banner Hospital in Desert Banner.
Wow.
So we had we lived on in a nice home in Tempe. It was close to schools and close to the church, and it was a good place to raise kids. And they did well. They were all involved in the church and activities at the school, and things were going really well. Our family was doing well. We were all very happy, and one day my wife went on a hike with her brother to the Grand Canyon, and she had a kind of a cough that was giving her some problems, and so she thought she better go get that checked, and she had an X-ray, and it was cancer, and she'd had a melanoma on her back, not a wart. What do you call it? It was on her back. Anyway, they took that off, and they didn't think it would be too serious, but it did metastasize and went into her lungs. And so here she was a few years later. She had cancer in her lungs with melanoma, and there wasn't much of a chance the doctor gave us that she would survive that. She lived a year before she passed away. Very devastating to our family. The youngest was Jacob, and he was just 2 years old when she discovered she had cancer. She lived a year or so. She died just after his 3rd birthday. So he doesn't have very many memories of her. They're very vague memories.
When was this?
Have very strong, very very beautiful memories of their mother.
Oh, that's nice. Around what year was that?
It was in 2003.
I gotcha. Around 2003. Yeah.
And so everything was in turmoil. Everything was turned upside down in my life. My whole world was wrapped around her.
Right.
We've been married for 25 years, and she was everything to me. And I just didn't know how to breathe without her. I'd never been away from her for more than a few days, and it was very devastating. And the children, she was a very, very nurturing woman. She didn't know how to handle teenagers, so she wasn't real close to teenagers, but the little kids she was just extremely close to, and very nurturing, just the sweetest person to these little kids. And they needed her, and they were just completely lost. Dallin was her baby for the longest time, and he was 8 years old. He'd sit on her lap at church, and he just was so needed her affection so much. It was really hard for Dallin when she passed away. Jenny just didn't know where to find her life. Shreese was about 18, and she tried to take the role of mother and tried to help the kids and be there for them, and she was wonderful. but it was so stressful for her. She started developing TMJ with her jaw, and I knew she was she was just under too much stress. And our oldest Theron was going to school. He came home and went to school here in Arizona. And Rachel at the time was married, and she had two little boys, and she was living up in Utah at the time. And so it was quite devastating. At that time, my youngest, Jacob, and Jenny went to live with Rachel, and because I just didn't have the ability to take care of them here. And that left Dallin and Paul and Theron and I, and just a bunch of bachelors. And it just was so hard on Dallin at that time. He was lonely and missed his mom and didn't know where to find life. And Jenny and Jacob were living with Rachel, and they were doing pretty well. And Sharice was trying to go to school and trying to move forward with her life. Mark was just struggling. He became quite depressed and just difficult time in his life.
Sure.
Eventually, I had to put my life back together, and so I was very busy dating and meeting women and trying to find the right person for my family and the right person for me. I was very fortunate. I met a woman that she'd lost her husband not very long before my wife had died. And I had 8 children, and she had 8 children.
Wow. And
we were introduced through mutual friends, and so we went on a blind date, and I thought she had stood me up. I waited, and she was late, and that was, I should have known she'd be late for things. That's the least of her weaknesses. She's a wonderful woman. If that's the most awful thing about you, that you're sometimes late, that's not very bad. And but I thought she'd stood me up for the date, but there she showed up, and she'd been to her stepson's wedding, and so she was just a few minutes late for the date. And we met at a Chili's restaurant and had dinner together and got acquainted. She invited me to come over to her house to get some music that she had that she was interested in, and so I went there and met her 3 youngest children, and I just had this feeling just jump up in my throat that these beautiful children that I just touched my heart when I met them, and they were playing horsey, and 2 little girls with their older brother. He was a few years older, and he was the horsey, and they were playing horsey with him, and this feeling just came over me. I just loved those children automatically, and I thought, these could be my children, and that thought just really touched my heart. I think I fell in love with those kids before I fell in love with their mother.
Wow.
And she brought so much healing into my heart and into my family. Her values were very much like my kid's mother. We had a lot of things in common in terms of our children and how we wanted to raise our children. There were some things that were different, but a lot were very similar. And so the family meshed together pretty well. We had a pretty nice home there in Tempe where I'd raised my children. We had remodeled and added an extra bedroom, and so it was a 5-bedroom house, and I remodeled the garage and put 3 more bedrooms in the garage, and they were small bedrooms, but they were nice for those older teenage kids. And so we had 11 kids that we were raising for a very short period of time. We had Sharice with us for a short period of time, and Dallas with us for a short period of time. I think we had 13 at one time for just a few weeks, a couple of weeks, but that didn't last very long. but for a long, long time, we had 11 kids that we were raising there in that house.
Wow.
And those were interesting times as the two families were learning to adjust to each other. My wife had been married and had 5 children with her first husband, and divorced him, and then she remarried her second husband and had the 3 younger children. And they their father had died for the 3 younger children, and so there's lots of blending to take place there with different dynamics, with different aspects of the family, and the older children still had a father that was around, and so they had visitation with their father quite a bit, and we had 2 13-year-old daughters at the time, and we thought, well, that would be great. Let's put them together, and that was great until they had this horrible fight. And I thought, oh no, what are we going to do now? So we separated them in different bedrooms, and before long they were having sleepovers nearly every night. They would just become the best of friends. We had 2 14-year-old boys that really got along well with each other. They were just super nice kids, and they hit it off and became good friends. And that was good for them in high school. My wife's children were more outgoing than my children, and they, I think their personalities kind of helped my children come out of that dark place and be a little more outgoing and sociable. So that was really good for them, for my kids. We had the oldest that was at home was Adri's daughter, Mindy, and she was with us for a little while, and she got married. And we had my son Theron and Rachel were already married at the time, and Adri's oldest daughter, Lindsay, was married at the time. And so Dallas was the next one. That was the next oldest of hers, and he got married not too long after we were together as a family.
Right.
And little by little, we married them all off. And the last one got married just this last year, Hans and Elise were married this last year around Christmas time. Hence just after the New Year, and so that was, they're all married except Paul, who has some disabilities, and will probably always live with us. And then Jacob is serving a mission still in the Little Rock, Arkansas mission, and is currently serving in Mississippi. So we've got all the kids raised now. They're all out of the home except Paul. And they're all doing really well, and all going to school or graduated, or doing really well with their lives. All of our children are active in the church. They are living the gospel, and there's just not a greater wonderful blessing than that, than to have these 16 children that are raising their families in the gospel and raising their children in the gospel. And it's a wonderful thing that brings our family together and helps us to have a common thread and common direction in our lives. And grateful for that. That's kind of the story of where we're at this point. Do you have some other questions?
I was just going to give, wow, what a great story. Very interesting. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for future generations from your family that might see this?
When I was a little boy, my brother, I knew he was kind of struggling with his belief in God, and he asked me what I believed, and I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I never had questioned what I believed. I believed in God with all my heart, even at that very young age. And there's never been a time in my life when I have not have a strong belief in God and believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ in the way that I was raised. And that has been a part of my life all my life. And I have a very profound testimony that Jesus Christ is my Savior. There was a very short period of time when I was in college that I had some questions that lasted a couple of weeks, and I sorted through those questions, and that's the only time in my life where I even had any questions, that there's been such a profound, deep feeling, so deep in my heart that Jesus Christ is my Savior. And I love him, and I know he loves me. I know that. It's to me, it's gone beyond something of a belief. It's something that I know. It reaches into the deepest fibers of my being. And I'm grateful to have that as a foundation and a stay in my life that's always given me direction and always given me purpose and always given me an idea of where I'm going. And I know what it's all about. When my wife died, it was horrible, devastating, but at the same time, there was a comforting spirit in my home that was beautiful and sweet. And though I grieved the loss of my wife and missed her and wanted her, the comfort that I felt, the Spirit of God that was in my home and the Comforter that was there with me was so wonderful and so sweet and helped me so much. It was there for several months, very gradually left as I began to kind of adjust and learned how to cope. And when I remarried, then it wasn't like that had all gone, but it just gradually left as I was able to manage my life without it. And those are the kinds of experiences that have been so comforting to me in my life. Right. And they're just beautiful to me. I'm often touched by listening to apostles and prophets in the church, and I hear them, and I'm touched by their messages, and I feel God's Spirit, and when they speak, and I know that they are prophets of God, and I'm grateful for them, and that's fundamental in my life. There isn't anything more fundamental in my life than my testimony of Jesus Christ. And I know that he spoke to Joseph Smith. I know that. And I know that the Book of Mormon is translated by the power of God and gives direction to me. And I love the book, and I love what it teaches me. I am grateful to have this testimony, and grateful that I have a prophet. Right now there's a terrible virus going around, and I see so many indications that this is the last days of this world, that there's going to be some very difficult calamities, difficult things going on in this world. And to know that I have a prophet that talks to God, and I know that, and I can follow that, and it's so comforting to me, and it's a great blessing to me to have that in my life. And that testimony is just a foundation in my life that is very sweet and very beautiful and very meaningful to me. And there's nothing more meaningful to me than that testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to share that with you.